save your money. I know we're very frugal with our expenditure and mid-year budget. We don't want to scrap it on you. We don't have to do touch this policy.
I think we might need to do that reset button on the aircon downstairs.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along. Just a couple of housekeeping issues while we get going. The rural city of Wangaratta has a live streaming here tonight. So clause 91.4 of the Governance and Meeting Conduct Local Law provides the following. This public meeting is being recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be retained by Council in accordance with the Council's legal obligations, and as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to acknowledge the Bangarang people as our traditional owners on the land which we are meeting, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders and to elders past, present and emerging, and to any other traditional owners that may be with us today. Would you please stand for the prayer? Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations, so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people on whom we serve. Amen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all councillors are here and present. No apologies. We have no citizenship ceremonies. And I'll just go through the confirmation of the minutes from the previous council meeting. Could I have a mover for the Councillor Fitzpatrick? And a second to Councillor Clark. All those in favour of the minutes? The motion is passed. Ladies and gentlemen, conflicts of interest need to be disclosed prior to this council meeting starting, and I'll hand over to Councillor Curry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict of interest with regards to duty for 14.2, as my employer had also tendered for this particular line item.
Councillor Curry, happy to stand out of the room for this? Okay, no petitions and hearing of deputations, there's none. Ladies and gentlemen, councillor reports there. I'd just like to make that this is our last meeting until February. So the council team here, I hope we have a great meeting here tonight and respectful of everybody's wishes and needs, as there will be a few controversial issues that will come up. It will be quite clear throughout the evening. At the end of the day, we wish you all a happy Christmas and make sure that you stay safe and have a prosperous new year as well. Thank you. I'll go on to executive services, our 2020 council meeting dates and venues. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Chair. We have a list of proposed dates for our ordinary meetings for the 2020 year. There is no scheduled January meeting. Of note, two things. We're proposing to move the normal week for council meetings from the third week in the month to the fourth Tuesday in the month. And we've also proposed two meetings, one in May and one in August at 3 p.m. following our trial of the 3 o'clock meeting this year.
Thank you, Brendan. Any questions from the gallery with the change of these meeting dates? No? Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Harry Bussell, Councillor Dave Fuller, Deputy Mayor. Would Anyone like to talk to the motion? Councillor Bustle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Had a look at these times and dates, and I'm very glad that we're not going back to the South Wangaratta fire shed after the last meeting up there with the, I thought I was going to get lynched. And I think if we, the other thing, we may need to prune some trees along the Carville Road to be able to get there in March, so otherwise you might be late. Mind we wear as a councillor, it's very easy to get caught up in the city bubble. But all the good things start out in the bush, and I think that it's very, very important that we come out and smell the air in the country. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bustle. Anybody else like to talk to that motion? No, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Okay. Thank you, Corporate Services. The 2019-2020 mid-year budget review. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, sorry, Councillor Curry first. Oh. Thank you, Sarah. You go.
Thank you. So yes, item 13.1 is for this year's mid-year budget review. So halfway through each financial year, we review our budget and look at our actuals, what savings have been made, and any new projects or requirements that require funding to be allocated. So this proposal for this year mid-year budget from an income perspective looks to grow our operating surplus by 152,000 from 3.346 million to 3.498 million. And to increase our capital budget from 42.715 million to 43.191 million. And the recommendation is as per the screen.
Thank you. Councillor Curry, would you like to look at an alternate motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, I would. I'd like to make it that Council number 1, having considered the 2019-20 budget review, adopts the 2019-2020 budget review as reference framework for all future budget reporting for the 2019-20 financial year, including the marketing strategy and brand redesign, 152,000, and the Sicily Avenue Swan Street intersection upgrade, 62,376, and point 2 adopts the increase of 538,376 in the capital works budget in the 2019-2020 budget review. Point 3 notes any identified saving to the end of the financial year, 30th of June 2020, will be utilised to offset the increase in the capital works budget of 538,376.
Thanks, Councillor Curry. Are there any questions from the gallery? No questions from the gallery. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Curry. Seconded, Councillor Clark. Anyone else like to talk to the motion? No, in that case, all those in favour? The motion is carried. Your microphone, Harry. Thank you. Protected disclosures, please, Sarah. 13.2.
Yep, thank you again. So this relates to our protected disclosures policy. So a few months ago we actually came to council with improvements made to this policy. This revision is to incorporate further changes that will come into force in January under the Act. So in terms of new legislation that needs to be incorporated to go live in the new year. And again, the recommendation is as on the screen.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the gallery? No, thank you. Can I have a mover for this draft? Councillor Benton and Councillor Fuller, seconder. Any councillor like to talk on the motion? Councillor
I
Bustle.
will explain, Mr Mayor, thank you, that a lot of the documentation that caught my eye in relation to the attachments is a duplication really of what we did move back in September, in August meeting, and was then adopted. It just reinforces some of the things that we have to do and we're directed to do by the legislation, and it's not ad being, but It just has to be done by directive of legislation, as Sarah has said. So I did ask the question earlier to the CEO, was it the same thing we were doing again? But apparently it isn't. We're not gone in and we've had it fully explained. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. No one else to talk on that item? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Sarah. Jamie, community wellbeing draft event policy.
Thank you, sorry. So this report is presented to Council following on from the draft event policy that was presented and has been out for community review. So we received 2 submissions, one verbal and one written. The recommendation before Council tonight is to adopt the event policy 2019 for immediate implementation, and that Council makes a commitment to review the waste and sustainability of Council run and funded events and develop sustainability guidelines and recycling requirements to be introduced, and that we also notify our submitters in writing of Council's decision.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Jamie. Are there any questions from the gallery on this? No. Can I have someone to move this motion? Councillor Fuller and Councillor Clark, seconder. Any councillor like to talk in favour of the motion? Councillor Fuller.
Just like to acknowledge the work that the staff are doing to make our events more sustainable and acknowledge the environmental impact of some events. So this is a great step forward.
Thank you, councillor. Nobody else? Put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Mark, could you please mention again your 14.2?
So I have a conflict of interest regarding duty due to my employer at the time tendering also for this particular line item.
Thank you, Mark. Could you step out of the room? Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. So this is a rather exciting project that Council has been working on for many years now. So this is to facilitate the future use of the Max Parkinson Lodge facility. So this facility was developed several decades ago and has, for a multitude of reasons, been left unused for the last few years. Through work with the Department of Health and Human Services, Council has negotiated the position for us to be able to enter into a transfer of this facility to an appropriate housing authority that will be able to redevelop the site. Council went through the process of an expression of interest where we put it out to relevant and qualified housing authorities who would be able to deliver a service to meet the needs of our community and redevelop the site appropriately. The expression of interest process has closed and we received several submissions that have been evaluated against a set of criteria. And the recommendation before Council tonight is that Council enters into a tripartite agreement with the Director of Housing and Beyond Housing Network to facilitate the transfer of the land and the building situated at 8 Sadler Street, Wangaratta.
Thank you, Jamie. Are there any questions from the gallery in relation to this item? Can I have a mover of this motion? Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Fuller. Thank you very much. Councillor Fitzpatrick, would you like to talk on the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this will be a great use of the Max Parkinson's Lodge. We know that here homelessness can be a result of many social, economic and health related factors. And individuals can become homeless after many years of experiencing poverty, poor relationships, drug and alcohol and mental health issues, and housing is a human right. So I believe that this project will provide significant increases in the availability of safe and accessible housing for people and families in our community who are at risk of homelessness.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Anybody else like to talk on this motion? No? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of accepting? The motion is carried. Okay. Thanks, James. Thanks, Jamie. 14.3, the draft walking and cycling strategy.
Thank you. So this is a significant piece of work that council officers and the community have been working in partnership for many months now to develop the draft walking and cycling strategy. So we all know that lots of people within our community walk lots of places and use our roads and cycling network to move around for recreation and social purposes. A significant amount of work has gone into this in terms of developing an understanding of where our priority areas are and where work needs to happen to improve the walking and the cycling network within our city and our rural areas. This is a long-term plan and outlines priority projects over the next decade for council to focus on, and also looks at some educational projects and some ways of working at a program level to make the city and our rural areas safer for people who are on foot or bike. So the recommendation before council tonight is that council endorses the draft walking and cycling strategy and places it on public exhibition for a period of at least 60 days, ending on Tuesday the 11th of Feb 2020. The council considers the submissions received in the final walking and cycling strategy at a future council meeting, and if no submissions requesting a change are received for the strategy, the council adopts the draft walking and cycling strategy without further resolution.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions from the gallery on this issue? Thank you, Megan. Come forward. That's it. In wheelchairs? Yeah, on how this will help people in the wheelchairs, and also the walking and cycling strategy that will look after people who can't get around as mobile as what most of us can. Yeah. Jamie, could you answer?
So it's a really good question, because making sure that our pathways and our roads are safe for everybody, but particularly for people who may need some extra support for accessibility, is really important. So we have worked with our accessibility group to talk about how to, simple things like where to cross roads, but also where there's gaps in paths, so that we're making sure that neighbourhoods are connected and that you can move throughout the city really safely. And that's for everybody, but especially important for people in wheelchairs or people who may have some mobility issues. So there's lots in there that talks about it, but if you want, have a look at the plan and talk to one of us around if you think there's anything in there that could be improved or added. So it's out for comment now for the 60 days. So we'd really love to have any feedback if you think we've missed anything. Yeah, so if you call the front desk, or I can give you my name and number after the meeting, and you can give me a call, and we've got a project officer who's working through any of the comments, so we'll be able to chat after the meeting.
Yeah.
That'd be good, Becky.
You'll be able to come and sit down with one of the officers and talk to them and show them on a map exactly where you think this could be improved. Great, thanks Megan. That's okay? Good job. Thanks for your question, great question. That's all right. Any further questions from the gallery? Please, Mr. Fox, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Merry Christmas to everybody. Just 2 points I'd like to make. One is that it's really refreshing to see now that we've got something on exhibition for 60 days. I don't recall seeing that before, but anyway, it's a new era, and I hope that continues. The second thing I want to say is, and Second thing I want to say, Mr. Mayor, is, and I can't think of a better word, is the debacle in Oven Street. There is no opportunity now for a cyclist to ride in Oven Street where the new upgrade, well, supposed upgrade, has happened. The road is too narrow. If a cyclist was to ride up Oven Street, all the cars would have to stay behind them because you must be a metre away from the cyclist. So we can't go and redesign it, but sir, the road should have been wider, the footpath should have been narrower, or the footpath should have been moved into and taken some of the land in King George Gardens. But what we've got, I hope, is never repeated. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Yes, sir. Please come forward. If you just state your name and
Sure.
be great, thank you, for the record.
Yep, Matt Henderson.
Thanks, Matt.
I sent the question through an email, but I'll try and shorten it. But essentially, we've been in contact with Council since August 2018 about what we think is a safety issue on Wangaratta Road.
Yes, I had your question earmarked to come at public question time. I'm more than happy to have it now. Thank you.
Would you prefer that? Or?
No. Happy for now. Thanks, Matt.
So quite simply, we became aware of the cycling pedestrian strategy by accident when we'd been in contact with Council about having it perhaps addressed. It kind of cuts off the separate communities, Kensington Park, Warnock Grove, Wangaratta, parts of Wangaratta. And in that time, we've added about 130 new lots out in that area. But the main issue is there's no physical protection for pedestrians, cyclists, families, exercisers, dog walkers, whatever, on a 100k section of road, and we think that needs some urgent attention. It's made it into the strategy as a line item. It's saying currently a safety concern, but it's got a priority of low and no funding against it within the next 10 years. I'm just wondering what more we need to do to raise this and have it looked at and perhaps fixed.
I actually think Alan might have an answer for you from infrastructure.
I do. For the 160 odd metre length where the cycle path comes out close to the road is what I'm talking about specifically. And I think that was your question back in October, some 12 months ago, if I'm right. So I think we pointed out to you at the time it was a Vic Roads road, and that doesn't mean we're not going to do anything, but it means we have to work with Vic Roads. I think we said we'd take it to the Traffic Liaison Committee, which is a committee of the police, Vic Roads and Council. We've done that to every meeting since you first raised it, and we're getting closer. We've put forward a number of suggested solutions, none of which have been acceptable to Vic Roads. So we're now doing an internal design to lengthen the culvert, which causes the path to come out close to the road. So we'll increase the length of that culvert and move the whole path in away from the edge of the road, so it's in alignment with the rest of the path. So that's for that 160 odd metre length. So we've got that in train at the moment. We still have to fund it, but and that will be to the satisfaction of Vic Roads, and we've got the indication that they'll be more than happy with that solution.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. No good. Any further questions from the gallery? Okay, can I have a mover there? Councillor Clark will move it. Second to Councillor Benton. Would anybody like to talk on this issue? No, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion, sorry. Councillor Bustle, I didn't see you. We didn't go. Got to make it clearer to me. Thank you. Councillor Bustle.
I just want to encourage people in the King Valley that have been having a fair bit to say about cycling, and for the ones that are here today, please, now's the opportunity to put the thoughts into, have input into this strategy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Before I go to the vote, I'll just back to Matt. Matt, in your question, you were also talking about extending the bike trail because we do have those new estates that go out quite a long way, or are you just happy with the length of the bike trail going out the Yarrawonga Road?
It looks like it's been combined in the strategy as lengthening out to Illawarra.
Yes, I think so.
And perhaps sealing it as well as
Just the two.
separating it from the road.
From the main road, right? Great, thanks, Matt. And obviously with our growth areas out there, there's new land coming up with, I think you said, with extra housing that's out there, and there's only future plans for more, so it is an important issue. So I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of proceeding? The motion is carried. 14.4, revised logo. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. This report is following on from the August ordinary council meeting where councillors adopted a recommendation for us to look further at the logo. The recommendation before council tonight is that council acknowledges the feedback that was received from individuals and groups involved in the targeted stakeholder engagement as set out in the recommendation from the August ordinary council meeting, that council adopts a revised logo and that council progresses with implementation of the marketing strategy with the incorporation of the new logo.
Thank you, Jamie. So before I put that to public for their questions, I just want to change the motion and put a new motion forward, or a new recommendation forward. So it is a motion there. So my option is that one, and this is different to the recommendation that you've been reading in the draft, in the agenda, and it is acknowledges. So this will be the new motion moving forward, that I acknowledge the feedback received from the individuals and groups involved in the targeted stakeholder engagement as set out in the recommendation from the August ordinary council meeting. 2, we retain its existing logo. And 3, we progress the implementation of the marketing strategy incorporating council's existing logo, and we do not pursue any further redevelopment of the new logo unless future councils determine this as a priority in the future. So that is the new recommendation, not the one that you've seen in the agenda. This is my recommendation moving forward to be voted on, that we keep the existing logo and don't pursue another logo any further.
Yeah,
So I'll now ask if you would like to ask a question, but that is the question that you can ask in relation to that motion. Please come forward. Yes, sir. Can you just state your full name? Thanks, David.
My name is David.
Just the man speaking. Yep, that's it. Thanks, David.
My name is David McCabe. I have a question, but it's really based on what is the motion previously put before council. But hearing the mayor's comments, I'm amazed that the council, well, the mayor, can be so negative on a proposal of going forward with a modern outlook. In regard to the choice of logos, I'm interested to know if these groups that the council has consulted, community groups, do any of these groups or persons within these groups have skills or are knowledgeable in graphic design?
Yes. Sorry, Jamie, do you want
Yes, so council laws tasked us to consult with a set number of stakeholders. So there was a significant number of people who are business operators within Wangaratta and our municipality, many of which have got their own marketing and branding experience within business and professionally. We also consulted with our Indigenous community and with our youth council as well. So there were a number of people who looked at the logo proposed from a number of different angles, many of which have got their own business, marketing and branding advice. Obviously, internally within here, within council, we also have our own expertise in terms of marketing and branding, and indeed we engaged services outside of council to come up with a logo that are the experts in this field.
That was to be my second question. Has council sought opinion from local persons with qualifications, skill and experience in graphic design to assist council in evaluating the proposed put forward by Wild Dog or whoever they were?
Sick Dog.
So SDWM, Sick Dog Wolf Man, they are a very reputable agency who does significant work throughout Australia in terms of marketing and branding and logo development. So they are very well known and well respected in the field, and council has engaged them to work with us on the draft logo.
Well, maybe I'll have a third question. Seeing that the mayor has put forward an alternate view to the rural city logo, how will you proceed now with your proposal, as it is obviously fresh to the other members of council?
Sorry. Yeah, so it'll go to the vote and it'll be up to the councillors to decide whether that recommendation is a good one or not. If it doesn't stand up, well then we'll convert back to the previous recommendation. And so it has to be numbers voted on it to be able to get it across the line. If it doesn't, it'll go back to the previous recommendation. And as far as your first question, that I certainly am progressive for Wangaratta moving ahead. I don't think, and I represent not just myself, I represent the people of Wangaratta, and the opinion that the revised logo wasn't the right logo, and maybe the process of procuring a new logo would need to be looked at again in the future. So I'm certainly not adverse to change, and certainly of a logo, but maybe under a different regime or a different process.
I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other further questions? Yes, sir. Thank you. Please state your name too for the record.
My name is Ray Hart. You've probably shattered me with your dealing with your change of tactics. Are we going to get a check, like if it gets voted here, are we going to get a chance to talk against the motion that was originally put up? Or is this the time now?
This is the time now.
Okay.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, because if this motion gets up, then we won't refer back to the previous one.
That's right, that's right. Well, I was just looking here at some of your notes, and you talk about, like I'm backing you up here, you talk about here, we also recognise that there is an inconsistent approach to our branding and marketing. Like you're criticising yourselves there. In other words, our current logo, you're bringing in a new one saying that this will help us, and yet you're admitting that your previous approach wasn't good enough. So how can you, to back up your, what you've said, that why change the logo? You're admitting here that, as I said, a quote from yourself, we have also recognised that there is an inconsistent approach to our branding and marketing. So in other words, you're admitting default on your old one, so can't knock your old one if you're not hitting it properly. Don't say the old one is not good enough. And you've also, again, another part in your, I think, going right back to your May meeting, you state here, we are growing, our economy and a community are growing because we offer exciting opportunities and potential. That's what it's about.
Yep.
What's the new logo got to do with that? Nothing. I've been in 2 businesses that have changed logo. It's your product. What you're selling is your product. And we've got a great product here. That's why all of us are living here and love it. Because we've got a product.
Yes.
And you know, so I just can't see why to changing of the logo. I'm just looking at
Cam's
jacket
logo.
over there, his jacket, and I like the logo, so why change it? Just, as I said, you've said in here yourself, we're growing. So why change it? Totally agree with you.
Thanks, Ray.
Okay.
Thanks again. Any further questions from the gallery? Thank you, Mr. Fox. Please come forward.
Mr. Mayor, it's not often I'll do this, but I will bow to you. Thank you very much for a man with the logo. The second thing, sir, I would like to address is the fact that I believe the whole marketing strategy should be abandoned. You do not advertise any product unless that product is perfect. And you've heard me on many occasions in this chamber talk about the perfect donut. There's also the perfect winery, or there's the perfect plethora of things. But our city centre, which is always going to be the hub, is not good enough to advertise people to come to. Now, sir, I could get you a list of 15 or 25 or whatever number you like of things that should be done in this central business district before we spend $1 on promoting it. So, sir, I say to you, I've just taken one example rather than bore everybody with all
Mr.
the
Mayor,
rest of
point
the
of order,
examples.
Mr. Mayor, where is the question?
Excuse me, what was that?
Mr. Fox, where's your question?
My question is, do you think the CBD is of such a, such an excellent situation to be advertised? Now, sir, I bring you this photo. This photo was taken this morning. And this photo shows just an example. And this is the wave, the log that's in the front of the council offices or the back door to the council car park. This is rotting away through neglect. There's no other explanation for it. It is just rotting away through neglect.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, we're getting elected.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Thank you, Mr. Fox. You can sit down, Mr. Fox. I have seen the log. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fox. So I'll answer your question. We aren't perfect. I'm certainly not. And we try to advertise ourselves, sell ourselves as well. My business down the road isn't perfect, but we still market it and sell it to get more people to it, and it does work. So in answer to your questions, we aren't perfect. We're trying to fix things and trying to do things. This is the job of us at council. If you make your requests through our CRMS system that we have a rotting log, have you made that request through our system to say, could it be looked at? I would say not. Unless you're grandstanding here at this show here to try and grandstand over the top of us, it's not going to work with me. So thank you for your question. It's been asked and answered. You can now sit down. Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
thank you
Fox.
very much.
Thank you.
If you look at that photograph, you will see that there's a whole lot of dust all over it. Now, that is a handful of
Mr.
the
Fox,
rotten
asked
timber that
and
I
answered.
glued to the photograph.
Please take your seat, Mr. Fox.
Don't tell me things are beautiful when they're not. You want to go for a walk with me? Well,
Please sit down, Mr. Fox, in your seat. Any further questions? Thanks, Anne.
Anne Dunstan from Tarrawingi.
Thanks.
Following the brand strategy for a long time and going to lots of consultations, etc., I'm extremely grateful for the brand strategy, and I think people need to remember the logo is a very small portion of that. But my question is that how did it come to the conclusion that the stakeholder groups were the only people being consulted And there were quite a few individuals, for instance myself, that had no idea that there was further movement forward on the logo. I knew that it was going to be happening because of the August meeting, but there was no opportunity to provide feedback for that.
Thanks, Anne. It was decided at a council meeting, and that was a motion that was put forward that it was to go out and look for a new logo. This was in the August meeting, and in part of that was to, in that motion was to go out to certain groups, user groups, and other groups, not to go out to the general public, and that was voted on quite resoundingly.
One of the really difficult things in reviewing the minutes, for instance the August minutes, is that when it talks about public question time, it refers you to the link of the recorded video. There is no written discussion recorded in the minutes from about June onwards. It all says public question time, click the link. So if you've printed the document, you cannot actually click a link to find out what the discussions were.
Okay, good suggestion there. I'm not sure on that one, but we'll follow that through. Thanks, Anne. If there's no further questions, well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll call for a mover. Councillor Clark and Councillor Fitzpatrick as a seconder. Is there any discussion from council on this? Yep. Councillor Bustle. Okay, sorry, I'll go back to that one because I put the recommendation up. I am the mover. Sorry, and Councillor Fitzpatrick, are you still happy to be seconder? Yep. So I'll any councillor like to talk on the motion? Thanks, Councillor Bustle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A little bit blindsided with your alternate there, but that's okay. Mr. Mayor, I have no problems with changing the logo, but we asked staff to do a job. They did what we asked them to do. The people didn't like what they saw. I listened for everybody, and to me, it looked like the old cormorant had a broken wing. And now I would like to leave the cormorant alone and let it go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to talk on the motion? Councillor Benton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I suppose I'm only one of the councillors that was around when the original one, or the one we have now. And I know around the table it says you shouldn't look back, you always look forward, you've got to be modern about things. And I have no hesitation in putting out there that I supported the investigation into the logo to see whether what was out there. The problem I have with the logo in the proposed one, and I'm supporting the motion from the mayor has moved, is it didn't encumbrate the whole municipality. I know there was stories you could put around it. That original, the existing logo we have at the moment, and the logo is your identity. And that's why a lot of the decisions and a lot of the language, I believe, has come out. And I know back in 1994, the angst that was about what the logo was going to be, because the identities of their people and community groups, some of them were going to disappear. The present logo that we have has some of those identities back there. And it was very much a struggle to get some of that connection, and this council has struggled over the last 26 years to encrust all the rural parts of the municipality, for whatever reason it has. And this council you got before you has brought some of that about by the rural placemaking, and that's a real start to market it. It's going to take a lot more than just 11 people that sit around this table to sell this place, irrespective of what Mr. Fox says. We've got one of the best places in the world, and I think the logo challenge over the last 6 months has been like a horse's collar around the marketing ability. It's just dragged it down, although it's a really, very minor part of it. And going forward, get on with what we've got, sell it, we've got the best, and it'll encumber the people, and make sure that we are all pushing for the area. The identity part of it's still there. There's a lot of other community groups have all put their own little pieces up. We tried to do that with the original one, and so we could pull it apart. That didn't work. But in the present logo we have, all parts of this municipality are represented. You might still have to have an explanation about it, and it's a bit like the eye of the beholder, whether you like it or not. But you still have to have an explanation. But I still believe this thing does it in pushing it forward, and it can be used. Even as I speak, we have the black and white. You look at some of your driveway signs, they're already there. You can have the modern look about it. Don't have to have the colours in it if you want it. But at the moment we're going to stick what we've got. I'm supporting the motion wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other? Councillor Fitzpatrick.
So I'm supporting this motion. I am for change. However, I just don't feel that this current logo is Wangaratta. And if we're going to do it, I think we're going to learn from this experience. And if a future council decides to change that, maybe we need to look at our processes a bit differently, but we will learn from it. But I also want to say that we as a community also need to acknowledge that we need to brand and market Wangaratta ourselves. We all have a role to play in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just over 18 months ago, we began as a group in various ways to ask the questions about exploring who we are, the ultimate in livability, what our identity was, and what the identity was of our unique hamlets and pockets of a great municipality are. Staff took this project and began the exploration, and along the way we've had multiple discussions on how we love it here because it feels like home. We grew into feeling a bit about being surrounded by good things and the place where good things grow. We've landed here tonight with a difficult case of purpose versus achievement. Our aim, both as candidates and as sitting members, was to grow Wangaratta, to expand the population, to enhance people's awareness of who we are and what we have to offer. We have somewhat achieved this, but in a backward and unexpected and almost unwanted way. People now know us for our ability to take an element of the conversation, to deface it, and in doing so put a negative spin ahead of the positive, but also seemingly attack the pride of our community. With a number of people that have been vilified in different ways on social media and such. I recently asked a room full of people, 100 people to be exact, roughly, roughly exact. Sorry. Do you feel positive about the future of Wangaratta? And overwhelmingly, there was a resounding yes. I strongly believe we have a positive future. This process, when the dust settles on the negative connotations, will ensure we are attracting new people, new visitors, and new business. However, given the time of the year, I also ask everyone to lead into the new year with a positive and progressive future in mind. Look at the aim and the audience we are talking about, and remember that we don't have to sell here to us because we already love it here.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Curry.
Firstly, I'd just like to thank the council staff, and apologise all in one. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this particular logo, and after the last council meeting that we voted on this, the council sat around and they spoke to council staff, and they built the scope with sick dog Wolfman, and there's been a lot of work put into it. So from that point, I apologise that we are now stepping away from all of that work that you guys have done. So again, thank you, because there has been countless hours, and I think that it's taken a personal tally on some of the staff members as well. But one thing I will say is that, you know, we're trying to progress, we're trying to build Wangaratta. That's what all the council staff here trying to do. While we certainly won't agree tonight on whether the logo should or shouldn't go ahead between ourselves, the thing is that one of the key reasons that I wanted to see a change was in the past the council had a constant bad rap around certain things that they did or didn't do, and we really wanted to show the community and people afar that we're progressive, we're willing to change, and we're trying to move forward, and we're not, if you have a look at our age demographic, we're not of an older generation that's just stuck in the mud. but by the sound of it and listening to the way this particular vote could go, it would suggest that we are stuck and we are not willing to move forward. The iconography that could have come out of the last particular logo could have given symbols to each and every small town around Wangaratta and not just be focused on Wangaratta. I've heard about the cormorant on many occasions about what it stands for, and every time I hear a new person talk about the cormorant and the logo, it comes up with a new meaning. That I find disappointing. So the one thing that I will do is, if today we do stay forward with the old cormorant, that we actually get a definition and get it out there in public view, that exactly what every little speck and dot and wing and actually means within the logo. Thank you.
Councillor Curran, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly have been opposed to a change of logo right from day one. But I'm very disappointed that my fellow councillors and myself have taken so long to arrive at a decision. I wanted to see the marketing start some 12 months ago. We put the money in the budget and we employed someone to do our marketing strategy, and here we are 12 months down the track. We're still debating whether we go with a new logo or we go with the old one. Certainly I spent a lot of money personally in getting all my shirts and my jackets with the logo on them, and I'm very proud to wear the Wangaratta City logo, so I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. So in closing, I have the logo on my car. Sometimes I like it there, sometimes I don't. I travel down to Melbourne, and the people in Melbourne have got no idea what my logo means on the car. I travel into McDonald's at 6 o'clock in the morning and someone calls out to me, "Are you from the council?" So it shows that our logo is non-recognisable outside of Melbourne, but more importantly, it is recognisable in our municipal area. And I think that's the most important situation. It's important to our residents. We know what it means and stands for, or we signify it as a representation of council as well. So with no further ado, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the new motion as stated before by me, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion is carried. Yep, I'd just like to note a division here, and that would be all those against that motion. Sorry, all those in favour, you can note who they are. Councillor Harry Bussell, Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick, Councillor Harvey Benton, Councillor Ken Clark, and Councillor Dean Rees. And those against, who have it noted, Councillor Mark Curry and Councillor Dave Fuller. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll move on to item 15.1, infrastructure services, car fleet plan, vehicle leasing plan. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report is brought to Council to consider awarding a contract for the leasing of our light commercial and passenger fleet vehicles. There'd been a previous resolution about this lease, but however, when we went to the recommended firm, there was some concerns on their part, and we weren't prepared to exchange contracts. So we've gone back out to tender and thus bring the recommendation that's on the screen tonight.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any questions from the gallery? No. Can I have a motion, a mover, please? Councillor Dave Fuller, Councillor Harvey Benton. Would any councillor like to talk on this motion? No, I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Alan, would you disclose?
So the contract amount, and this is for 11 vehicles for 3 years and 28 vehicles for 5 years, is $1,480,894 exclusive.
Thank you, Alan. Wangaratta Railway Precinct Urban Street Renewal.
So this report's brought to council to consider awarding a contract for the construction of the what we call the railway precinct, which is Cusack Streets, Norton Street and Docker Street. So this is a project that's been on the books for a number of years now as part of the CBD master plan. It's all designed to make much better use of that space, to be a more welcoming place for people to come from the station, and hopefully we'll see more people on the train service, and to increase the pedestrian and cycling friendliness of that area. So there's been a lot of work, the plans have been out, and we've now wished to award the contract. When we went out to tender, we had a couple of options to include all 3 streets in the contract or to split the contract. The tenders have come in and with their plans and their dollars, and we think it's best to go with a single contract. The firm we're recommending tonight has got very good plans on how they can do this construction work with the minimal disruption to all those users of those 3 streets. So the recommendation is on the screen for tonight.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any questions from the gallery? Mr. Fox, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The conversation tonight has mentioned a number of times focus groups. This development affects retail traders, parking, cycling, whatever. The most prominent focus group to me would be the Chamber of Commerce or Business Wangaratta. I would like to know, my question is, has the Chamber of Commerce or Business Wangaratta been consulted as a focus group?
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Councillor Fuller, could you answer that one?
Not directly, but however the whole entire community, because this is a community project in terms of the entire community benefiting from the results of it, have been offered a number of occasions to come along, which does include groups enabling them to come forward and put submissions in. I think I've been to at least 3 at the PAC over the last 18 months in terms of design, redesign and such. So all groups and all community members have had that opportunity to commit, to comment and to contribute to the conversation.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I don't really find that a satisfactory answer. I'll put that down as a no. Thank you.
Can I just add something, please, Mr. Mayor?
Please.
We've had one-on-one meetings with every business impacted in that precinct. In some cases, we've had multiple. I know we've had 3 one-on-ones with one of those businesses. So all those businesses in those 3 streets have had one-on-ones, as well as the community consultation phases.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Mr. Fox. Any further questions from the gallery? Thank you. I'll put the. Someone like to move the motion, the recommendation to a motion. Thank you, Councillor Fuller and Councillor Clark to second that. Are there any conversations at council? Yes, Councillor Fuller.
Just like to acknowledge it's going to be good to get all 3 streets done at once, and to Brian's satisfaction, there are inclusions for bicycle paths in the Cusack Street part of the process, as well as the widened paths in Docker Street and Norton Street.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Any other councillors like to talk on the motion? Councillor Bussell, I can see you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I said 3 years ago that I thought that this project would be an absolute game changer for this part of Wangaratta. And the vision that I can see around those streets, it'll be just truly amazing. It will be absolutely amazing, changing an industrial estate into a retail area. And so I just can't wait to see it finish, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. No more queries? Councillor Fuller, did you want to finish? You're happy there as the mover? Okay, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Alan, could you disclose the contract price and the organisation?
So the organisation is on the screen, which is XL Grey Brunei. Can I also add there was a $2.5 million grant from the government for this project, and the contract price is $6,038,108.50 exclusive.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't quite catch that first number. What was it, Alan?
$6,038,108.50.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. 15.3, please.
So this report is brought to council to consider awarding a contract for cleaning services. Obviously, there's many buildings around Wangaratta which are cleaned by a contractor at present. That contract is due for renewal. We've been out, we had a great response from a number of different firms, but after a very extensive evaluation process, we've come up with a recommendation to award the cleaning service contract to Osbright Facilities Management, and the rest of the recommendation is on the screen.
Thank you, Alan. Are there any questions for the gallery in relation to this? I think so. Can I get someone to move the motion? Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Clark to second. Would anybody like to talk on the motion? If there's no, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Yes, the vote is carried. Could you disclose the price, please, Alan?
$155,144 exclusive per annum.
Thank you, Alan. 15.4, Sisley Avenue, Swan Street intersection upgrade.
So this report is brought to council to consider awarding the contract for the reconstruction of this intersection. This intersection carries a very significant amount of traffic already. Most would probably be surprised to know it's about 8,500 vehicles per day, that intersection. We expect that to grow considerably when the growth areas start being developed, and we'll very quickly see that over 10,000 and then up heading towards 15,000 vehicles a day. So we're trying to get in now and rebuild that intersection, which is failing in a number of different ways. When we did the design for this intersection, we've done a number of geotech investigations to look at the soil conditions there and base the design on that work. We then observed the rail crossing, the new pedestrian crossing at the railway line going in, and the amount of contaminated material they had to remove. So we did some further testing and found some of that contamination from the railway line extended into our project, and thus we had to ask for some additional money, which was done in the mid-year budget review. Project is still coming under what we expected once we knew about that contaminated material, but we did get that increase, and that's why. And the recommendation is on the screen.
Thank you, Alan. Any questions from the gallery? No. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Benton and Councillor Clark, second. Anybody like to talk on the motion? No, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Disclose the price, please, Alan.
$587,625.39 exclusive.
Thank you very much. I'll now hand over to Development Services, Stephen Swart. Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry, Hodgson's Bridge. I've crossed it out already. Right. Thanks, Alan.
Last one. So this report's brought to council to consider awarding a contract for the construction of 2 new bridges. These bridges at Farmers and Cays Road were totally destroyed in the flooding event we had a while ago. So we've gone out to and had a fairly extensive tender process and evaluation process. The contractor can build both of these bridges before 30 June next year, and it meets all of our requirements. So the recommendation is on the screen tonight. Probably worth noting that before we can go ahead, we have to get Department of Treasury and Finance approval, because most of this money is funded out of the emergency funds for when the bridges were destroyed by the storm event, and the balance is funded out of another bridge grant that we've received. So the recommendation is on the screen.
Thank you. Any questions from the gallery? No? Can I have someone to move the motion there? Councillor Bussell, Councillor Benton to second it. Any councillor discussion? No, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. Right, Stephen.
Contract
sorry,
price.
the contract price.
$1,364,313.25.
Stephen, now you can have your go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item's about the Wangaratta Planning Scheme Amendment number C77, which implements the objectives of the Wangaratta Aerodrome Master Plan 2017 and also relevant objectives from the Wangaratta Urban Waterways Flood Investigation, also dated 2017. Council adopted both of those documents in 2018. The amendment proposes to rezone some land out at the aerodrome and surrounding the aerodrome from public use and farming zone to a special use zone to facilitate the objectives of those documents that I just mentioned. The amendment also makes changes to the flood overlay and the land subject to inundation overlay, and it introduces a design and a development overlay to land surrounding the aerodrome to try and protect airspace out there. The amendment was exhibited as per the requirements of the Planning and Environment Act, and as a result of that process we got 4 submissions to the amendment. One of those submissions was generally supported the amendment subject to some changes to the schedule to the special use zone. The other 3 submissions supported the amendment. So tonight the recommendation to council is on the screen, and basically it's to consider all the submissions, make changes to the exhibited amendment in response to that one submission, and then adopt the planning scheme amendment and submit it to the Minister for Planning for final approval.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any questions from the gallery? No? Thank you. Can I look for someone to move the motion, please? Councillor Ken Clark and Councillor Harvey Benton to second. Any councillor like to talk on the motion? No? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This second item is about Council's domestic animal management plan. In September, we came to Council with a draft revised plan for Council to endorse that plan and release that for public consultation. We've now completed the public consultation process that Council made a decision on that night. As a result of that process, we received 1 submission. That submission did not request any change to the plan. It is very complementary to the plan and talks a little bit about off-leash areas. The recommendation tonight is on the screen there, and that's to adopt the domestic animal management plan and to provide the Department of Jobs, Precinct and Regions with a copy of the adopted plan.
Thank you, Stephen. Any questions from the gallery? No? Can I look for a mover of that? Councillor Fitzpatrick, Councillor Bussell. Any discussion from councillors? No? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Stephen. Planning application 16.3.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. This item is about a planning permit application for existing fertiliser business and associated signage at 49 Oxley Greta West Road, Oxley. Formal notice of the application was given in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act and also the provisions of the Wangaratta Planning Scheme. As a result of that process, we received a total of 11 submissions 4 of those are considered to be objections, and 7 are supportive submissions. All available information has been considered, including the application and the submissions, and the proposal has been assessed against the relevant provisions of the planning scheme, and the officer's recommendation is on the screen there. It's to it recommends issuing a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to some conditions, and some of those conditions I thought I'd just point out. There are some conditions in there limiting the hours within which certain activities can take place on site, also limiting the amount of material that can be stored on site. There's also requirement for a dust management plan and some requirements for screen planting. All of those conditions and others are in direct response to the submissions that we received against this proposal.
Thank you, Stephen. I'd just like to put an alternate motion forward for this planning application. For that recommendation by Council, and it's fairly similar. That Council resolved to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit with respect to application 19/162 for the use and development of land for trade supplies and development of business identification signage at 49 Oxley Greta West Road, Oxley, subject to permit conditions contained within attachment 1, with an amendment to condition 8 to read as follows. The following activities are not permitted to be carried out in any other time except between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday, and Sunday and public holidays between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. for the sake of A, loading and unloading of vehicles, operation of mechanical auger, and maintenance of vehicles involving engine noise, and 2, to advise the applicant and all submitters of Council's decision. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll put out to question time on this issue and that new notice, but I will just read a couple of questions first before we go further into questions. So this question is from Cameron Miller, and dear councillors, can I please have the following question answered in regards to planning application 19/162? How can the council be confident that the proposed use will comply with the noise guidelines during the day period when, as stated, council does not have any definitive information regarding the level of noise generated by the proposed use? Given the considerable amount of noise complaints made to council, why hasn't any acoustic testing taken place? Why have no council representatives visited the affected properties to better assess the noise levels and gain a greater understanding of the issue? Can you please explain the enforcement process if the applicant is unable to comply with the noise guidelines? How many breaches are allowed before the site is shut down? Will it be up to the neighbouring residents to prove the breaches? Thank you, Cameron Miller. So I'll hand that over to Stephen Swart to answer those questions.
So I might try and deal with them all together as far as possible. I'm happy to take some follow-up questions if my answers don't cover all of those topics. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the question about council representatives visiting the site to better assess noise levels. Should firstly say that council officers visited the subject land and surrounding areas on multiple occasions leading up to this point tonight. That was really not just to consider things like noise, but also to look at all aspects of the site and potential off-site impacts. As stated in the application, the noise levels will vary depending on the operations, and the operations vary depending on hours of the day and also different times of the year. So it's very difficult from a few site visits to gauge fully the level of noise coming from the site. I will say that when it comes to the noise aspect of this application, and you'll see that in the account and the officer's report, that's being considered very carefully. There's a number of mentions of guidelines in there, guidelines from the EPA, and there's an attempt within the officer's report to explain how those are applied. within the farming zone, which is the zoning of this land, but also within other zones like the rural living zone. Out of the information submitted as part of the application, out of some information we know from other applications, not just in our council but across the state, and out of some VCAT cases, as officers we were able to build a level of confidence that the noise guidelines are very likely to be met within the day, what I would term the day hours, as stipulated within the conditions or the proposed conditions. So that's why we worded that condition in that way. So it says that certain activities will be restricted to those day hours and not after hours, because we have some doubts about the noise levels after those hours. In terms of how our council can be confident if the proposed use will comply with the conditions of the permit and noise guidelines, I guess the honest answer there is that the council can never be fully confident. It's just like any other planning permit that we issue, the compliance of the use with the permit and also with the Planning Environment Act and the planning scheme, generally speaking, is something that we enforce as a council. We have the responsibility to do that. We also have the power under the Planning Environment Act to follow those things through. In terms of the enforcement process, I will point out that we follow the state government guidelines when it comes to enforcement. That's within, I suppose, a manual that talks about how the Victorian planning system should be applied and how that works. We also follow best practice as applied by other councils across the state. And those approaches really talks about the main focus of enforcement should be obtaining compliance rather than prosecution. So from our point of view, that's the focus every time we come across something like this. As I said, we do have the power under legislation to enforce matters and to take action, and we do that very regularly. We have different mechanisms available to us to do exactly that, and that ranges from, at the one scale, informal negotiation, so talking to the operators of the site about any breaches and trying to get compliance that way. But it also ranges to other mechanisms, including planning infringement notices, enforcement orders through VCAT, and court action. So we have to assess every situation on its merits and decide what's the appropriate course of action for that situation. I hope that's answered all of those questions.
That question, thank you, Stephen. I'll just bring up another one then before we go out to the public there. These are some questions we'd like addressed by council at its Tuesday meeting, the 10th of December. They are in reference to this, the planning application 19162 Keem Fertiliser Business at 49 Oxley Greta West Road. In PIN application 19/162, recommended permit conditions attempts to address some of the noise issues by restricting the hours of operation of the business to nearly all the daylight hours. However, Keem's Fertilisers' history is one of ignoring the regulatory process mandated by council. How are these restrictions to be policed, and what are the consequences following the anticipated protracted breaches? From our viewpoint, the regulatory framework has broken down, and this is the message that will go out to the rural city of Wangaratta ratepayers. PIN application 19/162 recommended permit condition attempts to address the dust issues by means of a dust management plan. Keem's Fertilisers' history is one of ignoring the regulatory process mandated by council. What processes follow if breaches occur of this requirement, and what are the consequences and the unintended consequences? Keem Fertilisers' history is one of ignoring the regulatory framework of this mandated council. PIN application recommended permit conditions goes some way to resolve the objections raised by the relevant neighbours. However, our view remains that Keem's Fertilisers operation should be located in an industrial zone, as are other similar operations in the rural city of Wangaratta. For our part, we are sceptical that the condition of the permit 19/162 will be met in reasonable or adequate time frame. We suggest that the regulatory framework has broken down in this instance. Approval of this amended permit will send a message that business can operate outside the regulatory framework with impunity without consequences. Is this the message of which you are comfortable with? Yours sincerely, Ruth Noble. Sorry? Yes. Are any of those objectors here that would like to comment further on that? Yes, are there any further comments you'd like to make apart from what we had?
Well, I would like to make a comment, if that's all right.
Sure.
The comment around the table, we have heard several times tonight about the livability of Wangaratta and how we want people to come for the livability. And then we heard about how wonderful it was to change an industrial site into a shopping complex or a shopping precinct. We are talking about changing a very pleasant rural living area into an industrial zone. It's only on one small spot, but you are removing livability for us to have constant noise all the waking hours of the day. Some people work shift work and actually need to sleep during the day, and in their 5-star environmentally built house with its double glazing still have to go to bed with earplugs because of the noise. We are home 24 hours a day. We are constantly barraged by noise. We don't hear the birds during the day anymore, we get noise. We also get an enormous amount of dust. That's not livability, that's absolute agony. It's a very sad thing to be able to say Oxley has become an industrial zone.
Thanks, Ruth. I'll get Stephen Swart to now answer the questions from the previous questions on your letter, and Ruth and the previous. Thank you for your letters in writing. Appreciate them.
Thank you. So I'll deal with the questions you read out first, and I'd like to respond to some of those comments made subsequently as well. In terms of the questions submitted in writing, they are again about, how do we deal with breaches of any permit that we might issue and breaches of those conditions. I did answer that already, but I'll just go through that a little bit more. So we definitely, as council, we do have the powers under the Planning Environment Act to follow up on such breaches. I mentioned a range of things that we might do, ranging from informal discussions through to court action. So that's nothing new. For the additional thing that I maybe would point out as well is that under the Planning Environment Act, any person can actually seek an enforcement order. So even, I am recognising that this is council's responsibility, and we will definitely follow those types of things up. But I wanted to point out that if for some reason somebody feels like, council's not going far enough, or you are not happy with a council's reaction or the job that they are doing in that space, any person is able to seek an enforcement order from the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. So that's some additional information that I wanted to point out. In terms of some of the comments that you make in terms of livability and changing a rural living area into an industrial area, the officer's report deals with the current planning provisions in place for that area. That area is zoned farming zone, and the farming zone is very much focused on facilitating agricultural uses and associated uses. And there's a level of recognition that the farming zone is a working zone.
But you even say in the thing that it's not ever going to go back into being a farming area. You say that in your paperwork that you handed out.
That's correct.
That it can never go back to being a farming area.
That's correct. I wanted to go on to say that even if this area was zoned rural living zone, it does not prohibit this type of activity from occurring. we could still consider planning permits for this type of activity in the rural living zone. In terms of amenity impacts, including noise and dust and a number of others that's been raised through objections, the officer's report deals with that in a fair level of detail, and we have included conditions or proposed conditions on the proposed planning permit to try and manage those impacts. And again, if there's non-compliance with those types of conditions, we'd have to follow up with enforcement action.
Thank you, Stephen. Are there any other questions from the gallery? If so, please come forward. Yes, sir. Could you please come forward and just state your name in the microphone? Thank you.
Roger Dad, and I, with Ruth, was the author of 3 questions, 2 detailed questions, and the third question, which actually was at the front of the document, was a question to all councillors. So I would like to hear all councillors' response to that question, and that question concerned what message this current dispute is sending to ratepayers. Because Keen's Fertiliser has operated now for nearly 4 years without any regulatory oversight. I consider that to be a very disappointing outcome. And now council and its officers have given Keen's Fertiliser over 12 months to get their house in order. And from our point of view, the immediate neighbour of Keen's Fertiliser, or the immediate neighbour of Keen's Transport Industries, Keen's Fertiliser is the business run by his son. We've got to the stage now where nothing has changed whatsoever. So I would, if you heard the Mayor talk about the implicit message that's going out to ratepayers, at least this is what I believe, is that your regulatory process has broken down in this instance. So I would like to hear how you expect to rectify that.
Thank you, Roger. We'll put the motion to a vote when it's ready, and you'll hear how people respond to that. So are there any other further questions from the gallery? No? I'll look for a mover of the motion. Sorry, I was the mover of that. I was too. Sorry if that changed. So the second, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bussell. Sorry, Councillor Benton. I always get that one mixed up. Thanks, Councillor Benton. Would any councillors like to talk in relation to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Bussell.
No.
You didn't put your hand up, did you? Do you want to talk first? You are the... I'll go to Councillor Bussell. I was the mover, so I've got the right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a bit late having my lunch today, and I brought my play lunch, and I was thinking about this here while you're talking. This is how it feels to be a councillor sometimes. It feels like the meat in a sandwich. And I mean that very seriously. As a real councillor, this is a very tough and considered decision. However, every person has the right to live in peace. And equally, I think people have the right to run their business and feed their family. This is a farm zone. That means you have the right to farm. I think that fertiliser is an essential service to farmers because bugger all grows without it. Now, because it's a farm zone, you have the right to farm, but that doesn't mean they have the right to do whatever you like. It doesn't. Or it doesn't mean that you should complain whenever you like. So I say to my great community, please respect each other, and I'm not more important than you. We all have to live together in this farm zone, and as farmers and rural living people, we may need our neighbours if there's a fire, flood, or storm, and probably your neighbours will be first to help. I think this is a fair compromise. It is a compromise from both sides. And I'd like to thank the Economic Development team for the work that they've done, and the Planning Department for the work, because this is like a rocking horse. It's very, very balanced. And I know that Celeste and Claire have done a lot of work in looking around the state to try and find a compromise. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Benton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to endorse the words of what Councillor Bustle has said. The part that this activity is in a farm zone. Over recent years, we've seen some great court cases in relationship to activities that are in farm zone, and it's been a great struggle to make sure that we have the right to farm. This activity is very much aligned with agriculture. Agriculture is one of the fourth, I think it is, economic driver within this municipality. It wouldn't have been 12 months ago that we were looking with this activity that took place until we got this thing sorted. We were going to have no ability to be able to obtain fertiliser in this municipality. And I think if people are going to start to realise that they can do whatever they like on either side of the spectrum of this within a zone, and it's the very fact that we have zones that people must understand the activities that we are able to accommodate in that zone. Because the pressures are starting to come on, little by little, whether you want activity in agriculture. Agriculture, I'm afraid, is not a 9-to-5 job. It's a 24-hour-a-day job. And sometimes you may have to do your activities in midnight because you can't press loose and hay in the middle of a day like today. And those activities are going to be done. The farmer doesn't want to be out there at midnight doing it, neither does the keen fertiliser. Yes, there's been activities out there that probably have overstretched the mark. But as a person that's worked with agriculture and agricultural people all my life, when they want something done, it's usually designated by a big black cloud coming over the Warrior Ranges to get fertiliser out in a hurry. It's something you can't put out at a time that is not appropriate. You're just throwing money down the drain. And that's one of the reasons why we can do. There could be worse activities where people don't have to come to council. Where they set a cattle yards in the same area that had to wean cattle and calves, they would bellow for a week, and there'd be dust and flies. And that's what you're going to look at. If we keep just chipping away at this and not having the right to farm, I have full sympathy with the people that live there, but you're in a farming zone. And you must understand, going into that zone, the activities are going to be farming and agricultural activities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Fuller.
Just like to acknowledge Harvey and Harry represent us emotionally on these topics, and one of the things we discussed was around the notion of public holidays, and I'd like to acknowledge that farmers probably don't actually know what that is because they don't actually have a working week as such, and as the world gets more 24/7, we have to be mindful of it. So the compromise that's being made is a good step forward.
Thank you, Councillor. If there's no further comments from councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the current motion? Sorry, the one I put, which is the current one. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Okay, there's no special committees reports and advisory committees. Will come a record of assemblies. Brendan, 19.1 record of assembly of councils and advisory committee reports.
Thank you, Chair. As is the norm, this report is simply asking Council to note assembly of council meetings and advisory committee reports that have happened during the period November to December, and those are all listed and attached.
Thank you. Any questions from the gallery? Can I have a mover for that motion, please? Councillor Fitzpatrick, Councillor Clark. Any comments, councillors? No. All those in favour? The motion is carried. There is no notice of motion, no urgent business. Councillor Benton.
Yes, the Mayor would move new standing orders at the moment, adjourn standing orders.
Thank you. All those in favour, that's the motion. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Clark. All those in favour? Thank you.
The reason being to discuss confidential matters.
You're moving our standing orders to put the confidential business in front of public question time? Yes. All councillors in favour of that? Yes, so that motion is carried. If you excuse us, ladies and gentlemen, we'll just go and we have a couple of confidential issues that we need to discuss in private, and then we'll be back out with public question time from there. So thank you very much.
Well, we'll definitely I'm afraid I don't justify the product might be because it's farming, but I have a hat factory and my hats can be used on a farm. My donkey, my work boots. Yes, okay, it's the only thing I regret about having sold the farm is that my neighbours now are destroying it. But it was, I sold off as the farm, and then the next person sold it off on the old titles, and the old titles there was lots of little spots. So the triangle has 7 houses on the old title. That was Mulcahy's, and then on our side of the road, it was sold off on the old title. So I've only got a dozen acres, and 5 and 7 acres all round. So he's on 6 acres, I think he's got. And it's all compacted because of the truck work and all the rest of it. And on our side it's still farming, on the triangle, it's still all zoned as farm, zoned still. It was all in the pipeline of being changed, it's the old Oxford Turnpike, and it was all going to be changed, and then something happened and they didn't go ahead with, I think it was when they sacked the council. It was meant to be rezoned. But you can't call fertiliser business farming. It's just a joke.
No, I don't live there, but I know what she's saying, because I grew up on a farm and stuff like that. I'm having the same issue, but I just live across the road. We're in the area, and they're running a business with the trucks and
Russell or Harvey better explain themselves. But that was right. If you win cars, you've been not for a week, you've done it for 4 or 5 days anyway. And the other thing is, as you said, I used to make hay here in government. You don't farm 9 to 5. That's why I asked whether it was farming or just curiosity. The other thing, they spent months and a few dollars on this logo. Can you tell me the logo of either Newcastle or Fremantle?
No. And can you tell me the logo of Alpine Trail?
Yes, I can actually. I can because I used to live at dinner.
Right, okay.
Now, it's changed because when we were at dinner playing, we had our own logo.
Right.
It is the river and the Alps.
Something like that.
Yeah. Exactly. If you said, if you gave me 5 logos, I'd say that one.
But do you know what? it's colourful, it's eye-catching. And that's why I remember it, it's colourful and eye-catching.
When you market something, you market Newcastle. I can't tell you what Newcastle, Toowoomba or Fremantle are, but I do know according to realestate.com they're the most progressive regional cities in Australia. They don't care about the logo, they market themselves. They don't market another symbol. I just, that's not 6 months or 12 months. I said to
I remember they're eye-catching. It's not eye-catching, it's irrelevant, so therefore I don't like that.
Well, the other one with all the bars on it, so they should change the Wangaratta Council and make it WC, that's where all the money's going. Logo, oh, and the other one was the bars, and I'm wondering what you put the middle of the city, which side of the bars they are.
I think they're I think that's possible.
Oh, well, I ran into Brenda the other day.
I think they're okay.
I ran into Brenda the other day in Bunnings, which I said, have you got someone to do this for you?
Well, no, obviously not. Obviously not.
He's buying your official stuff. Yeah, I'm amused, a little concerned about all the time.
But the time so, if it was part of their job,
But
that's what the staff get paid for, to not be working. I'm not being silly by saying this. I mean, so it's not time wasted.
They do what they're told.
That's right.
It stops with one person because if there's 7 council 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I think they're running the shire. Should say they will be the mayor. Well, go on to the right hand side. I had a concern with council a couple of years ago. People like saying, "Man, this is the tail wagging. You think you're running it, have a look around."
But yes, so no, I actually I've turned the sound on.
I'm just going to make a phone call because it's later than I thought.
Everything. Try and bring out.
But if you get, like I wrote to the CEO before, I'll tell you what the mayor how did that motion ever get on the agenda?
Actually, it's the other way around. The Alpine Shire, that's not the Alpine Shire, that's the Bega Valley Shire. The Bega Valley Shire has the mountains and the sun and we're going to the river. That's the Bega Shire. No, the Alpine Shire is a multicoloured leaf snowflake.
Nobody's known, nobody's
Sorry, let's change the size up. Can you ask Sophie to get the feed thing? There is that big grey tub that I feed rye in. Get 2 little white buckets of wing out of the barrel and wet it slightly and get rye in there and feed her. She knows what to do. You just do it anyway. Just messing. 2 white buckets. Nothing else. When I get home, I'll give them a time. Don't let it get Cassie any rising and say it's right where you should feed.
Late line.
Okay.
No.
That was sculpted by Hannah's. He's the German that big tree in the middle of it. And that was put there, so I don't seem to move it there. And it's just sitting there, all this stuff here, that's the rocky wood. I just run my hand and got a handful of it and glued it on there. And he reckons I'm crazy.
When we lived at Dinner, we started using something very simple. That on all their jackets,
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. To continue on with this meeting, I need a motion put forward to resume exits. So Councillor Benton again and Councillor Clark to resume standing orders. Are all those in favour? That motion is carried. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go back now to public question time, and we will continue on. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, come forward, and use the microphone and state your name. And I'll just excuse me for one moment, and I'll hand over for public question time to Councillor Fuller, as I need to go and see somebody. I need to do something.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does anyone have any public questions? No public questions? Mr. Fox, I believe I said no questions first, so I believe you've missed out. No, you can come forward, Mr. Fox. I was just having a little bit of Christmas Yuletide joy with you. Please step forward to the microphone, state your name for the record and where you're from.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Deputy Mayor, here we go. My question relates to what I spoke about before, that trying to promote Wangaratta. Can somebody tell me what our colour is? Are we like Richmond? Are we black and yellow? Can somebody tell me what our animal is? Can somebody, is it a snake or a lizard?
Mr. Fox, I believe that's the point of the style guide and the marketing and branding strategies, that you'll get all that information in turn. We'll be coming up with colours, and I think Jamie will back me up in saying that the next step forward will be to lock that in, and to then be able to say the story of the cormorant is pretty straightforward, and most people know the Wangaratta part and breaking it up. We'll do some work to obviously explain that a bit more for those that don't know, because part of this process is about selling ourselves, who we are and where we're from, so those that are outside of our municipality know who we are and where we're from, so that'll be part of the marketing and branding strategy. Next question, you've got two, so be careful what you're going to say next.
Have you, am I finished with that question, or can I continue on?
It was a question, you ended it, I answered it, I think you are ready for the next one.
But you interrupted me, I haven't finished the question. And the question was, the other thing is, where's our flag? Do we have a City of Wangaratta flag? We should be able to cater to every community, whether they're in Boston or New York or wherever. We should, and we can't. What is Wangaratta's emblem apart from the cormorant? We need to be noticed, and we don't have anything. You, sir, go caravanning like I did for years, and you pull up in a caravan in the Northern Territory and they say, what are you doing in Wangaratta?
I won't wait for a point of order, I'll just start answering and interrupt for you. So the process is that we've just had from the 5-2 vote that just occurred earlier is that the emblem, the item is the cormorant. We'll bring that forward as I've said with the style guide and everything, we might have flags. That might be an opportunity for you at the budget submission to ask for flags for us. We don't currently have flags. We have a logo that can go onto flags, so that's something that can be discussed at a later point. I'm just not sure where you're trying to get to.
Sir, I say to you, over in the park, if you open the blind there, you'll see a beautiful jacaranda tree. Purple. Let's adopt it.
You can't adopt a tree, Brian. Sit
Okay.
down. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Young man, come forward.
Yeah, Mick Dunstan from Tarawinji. We just had the 60 k's put in on Alpine Road, Beechworth Road. The road from Beechworth Road out to Carrickamungie is still 80. So is that something that's going to get addressed or changed, or it's always been 80, which every other road that's owned by council in Tara, like River Road, is 60. So
It's the Tara-Baroma Road.
yeah.
Thanks, question, Mick. First time I've heard it come up. The change to the 60 zone is a result of members of the public approaching Vic Roads and asking for that change, and they've supported that change. I am not aware of any request for the Carrickamungie Road, but if you want to put it in, I suggest you can. It would go to the traffic committee that we spoke about earlier. And if the traffic committee supports it, and it needs Vic Police support, and Vic Police would want to see a history of accidents or near misses or something like that to support it generally. And if it does get through that committee, it then goes out and is advertised for public comment. When we've had similar submissions in the past, when it's been advertised, we haven't had any public comment come back. So unless it gets really strong community support, you won't get the tick from the ultimate sale, which is Vic Roads. So if you want to consider, put something into us, and I can get it before that committee.
Yeah, I did ask a question at the local meeting out there before they changed it. So obviously they never asked, because they said they were going to ask you guys, because that's council road. So
Yeah, even though it's a council road, Vic Roads control the speed zones. We can't change a speed zone. Vic Roads has the control over all speed zones in the state. And at the moment, they all have to go to the minister, so it's quite a convoluted and long process.
yep, that's right. Another question with farming zone. It's part of section 32 when you sign up, on a house on say 2 or 5 acres, is that you can't complain about noise. Is that correct?
No, it doesn't state that. It just states that you are in a farming zone and your lawyer or your conveyancer should point out to you that you are buying in a farm zone and should know the conditions of buying in a farm zone. That farming procedures could happen in those zones, but it's the caveat emptor of let the buyer beware. That's why we have a vendor statement or section 32 under the Sale of Land Act. To tell people that here it is, go and get it checked over by your lawyer or conveyancer or family friend, and it does state what the zoning, every section 32, Stephen, has a zoning in it on what the zone is, and you will know you're in a farm zone, industrial zone, rural living, residential, whatever the zone is, and then you can look at the different procedures that can and can't happen. Thank you.
Yep, no worries, thanks for it.
Thank you.
Because the mayor's return doesn't allow you for 2 more questions, Mr. Fox, unless the mayor does wish a little bit of Christmas joy. He had 7 in the first part of the first question, so he's already technically up to 8. Your choice.
Well, there's no further questions. I'll give Mr. Fox one more question. Thank you. Come forward.
Thank you.
And it's only because you're dressed well today.
I thank you very much. Councillors and officers, if you take a trip out to White Street at in the corner of Burke Street and have a look at the primary school. The primary school has got a magnificent, and I believe off-the-shelf purchased playground. I don't believe it takes any engineering work by our staff. It looks like an off-the-shelf playground. Now, I note we are borrowing some money to improve the playground at Apex Park and somewhere else. So I'm suggesting, could we either divert some of that money or add a few dollars to it, buy an off-the-shelf playground just like the one at Burke Street and put it in the swimming pool Swan Street precinct? I'd ask you to consider that. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. We'll take that question and talk about it in a briefing session one day. So thank you. Are there any other further questions for council? If not, yes, Bill, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bill Bellis, resident of Wangaratta for 52 plus years. Draw to the attention, an article in the paper recently of trying to encourage people to use the white elephant behind us there with no entrance off Oven Street. My concern is with the current design of Oven Street that you're going to add to problems of people heading southward, either entering or exiting there. The road is too narrow for that. I think it might have worked before, but now with the design it won't work, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yep, Alan, that's in relation to the car park with the proposed new entry coming in. It's only an entry, it won't be an exit. You'll still exit at the rear into Victoria Parade, so it will only be an entry, and you will only be able to enter it as you're heading south. You won't be able to cross the medium strip that way, so that will certainly free the traffic flow up a lot easier. Thank you. If there's no further questions, ladies and gentlemen, that comes to the close of our council meeting. Just a couple of thank yous, as this is our last council meeting for the year, to all the people in the gallery that come on regular basis. Thank you very much for supporting council. We appreciate it. A special hello to Mr. Amory up the back there. It's great to see you here and be part of this as a great supporter as us and our previous councillor Ruth Amory, who was here for the first year of our term. I'd also like to thank our senior management staff here, or corporate management staff, for the tireless work that you do in representing us councillors. One special person I'd also like to mention who certainly looks after me unbelievably well here in our office, and no, Brendan, it's not you. It is the young lady over the back there, Rebecca, and she answers my phone calls after hours, in the mornings, replies to my texts at all hours in her home personal life. I do appreciate your work and your help that you've done for me as the mayor over this last year or so. So I can't see you because all I get to see is Stephen, and you're much prettier than Stephen. So again, thank you, Rebecca, for your hard work that you give to me. To my fellow councillors, I couldn't have done this great year without you all and the great guidance that I get off each and every one of you. And I do appreciate your support for me as the mayor. That was evident when the mayoral elections was on last month. To our CEO, again, thank you for your friendship and your great leadership here. We have a great leader at the helm, and we're very, very lucky council. When you see the work that goes on in other councils and how progressive we are, it's driven from the top. So thank you to everyone. Have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you next year. Good night.